You're listening to the Dirty Air Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first Dirty Air Podcast of 2016. We're in a new year, a new podcast, a new person in a chair. We've got NASCAR Sprint Cup Series driver Regan Smith, friend of NASCAR.com with us, NASCAR reporter and producer Jonathan Merriman, and I'm Chuck Bush, and we're here for another fun year of stuff. Regan, thank you for joining us.
Hey, excited to be here. We got this nice fancy studio. A lot of stuff I don't know how to work in here, but we'll try and figure it out.
Do you know how to work a microphone?
I do know how to do that.
All right, so talk, and then I think we're good.
That makes one
perfect.
of us. You're going to be pretty busy here coming up pretty soon. There's something right around the corner that you're taking part in.
Yeah, I hear there's a pretty big race coming up, and I'll be honest, I saw a TV ad because I was trying to figure out what time I was going to sit on my couch on next Sunday and watch it, and next thing I know, I get to race in it. So it's been a busy couple little weeks here, but can't wait to get to Daytona. I think all of us are pumped up. But not only is it the biggest race of the year, but the facility is completely new. They've revamped it. It sounds, everything I've heard, it sounds amazing. And I know myself personally, I'm not in the Sprint Unlimited on Saturday night, so I'm going to make a point to go up there, sit in the stands, watch it, check it out, and see how phenomenal it is.
You know, next week when we do this podcast, we ought to get you to tell us what it's like to see the race from the stands in the new. They're calling it the stadium down there.
Yep.
And like all the amenities. I think during media day next week on Tuesday, we'll be live on NASCAR.com, so folks can. I think we're going to go over and check out part of it with the camera, but I want to hear firsthand what it's like to see a race from the stands.
I'm looking forward to it. It's as a driver, I'm still a fan of the sport first and foremost, and I don't think it's been a long time since we've had a facility built like what Daytona is now, and in our sport, we've never had one to that extent. And you hear about the comparisons that some folks are making and what it reminds them of, and different places, and it's definitely going to make it's going to make it better for the fans sitting up there watching the races. It sounds like the whole experience is just going to be made even greater than it already was.
Well, the fact that, that we've invested $400 million into that facility for the fans, I think speaks volumes to the commitment and making their experience there great. So
I think it was 86 maybe? No, later than that. Somewhere around 88, 89 was my first trip to Daytona to watch a race there. And I remember like it was yesterday, at the time, the Busch race, which was on Saturday still just like it is now with the Xfinity race, was, they had the one tower there. We went and we got tickets the day of the race. We sat in the tower, which was, I can't remember what the tower was called back then. Was it the Winston Tower back then at the center of the start-finish line? Whatever it was. We had great seats. We sat there, and it was the entire Burton family around us. They were watching. I think Jeff and Ward or some combination of that was running in that race. So we were sitting really close by with them. On Sunday, we had seats that were down closer to turn one at the end of pit road, sat on the top there. And I have that image hammered into my brain as a kid of what it looked like to be at that racetrack and to watch those cars going around, and how that basically resonated with me and what I remember of it growing up. And I'm looking forward to making some new images there.
it's my first 500, so.
First 500.
First
man.
500.
Well, from someone who has driven in the 500, what is he going to expect to see in this 500? Now, it's going to be, as of right now, it's the first 500 in, 20 some odd years without Jeff Gordon. And now we're not going to have Tony Stewart in that. What are we going to see as fans, as someone going to watch their first one at Daytona? What are we going to see on track?
Well, you're going to see a spectacle, first off. The whole day, the whole build-up to the 500, it's such a show, and there's so many things happening, whether it's the concerts, pre-race concerts that are out in the infield, people that are just, partying, hooping it up, they've been there all week, a lot of them, starting on, some of them even 2 weeks at this point, on vacation, whatever it may be, camping out. But from Thursday until Sunday, the build-up that takes place and that happens as that ramps up, and when you wake up on Sunday morning, it's something else. It's something special, and it's I guess comparable like a Super Bowl or something to the extent that it is a big event.
NASCAR made an announcement yesterday that it is another big event in NASCAR. We've got new Daytona Stadium, and yesterday NASCAR Chairman and CEO Brian France, along with industry leaders, team owners, all this, they announced this new landmark charter agreement. We're giving out 36 charters to teams. What What does this sort of say about the progression of the sport and where it's heading?
Well, I think it's a huge moment for the sport, and that's been pretty well documented by everybody already. That this is something it's been pushed for a long time, and I don't think anybody that's been around the sport for a while really anticipated ever seeing this happen. And I don't know that you really thought this would ever go through and become a part of what we do. And essentially, it's the charters are a way for us to kind of give the team owners some values and say, hey guys, if you want to get out of this someday, there's something you can get out of it with. Because up until now, all they've had is the metal that's sitting in the race shops. And let's face it, that stuff's technology, and it's outdated the second that you build it. There's something new being designed and getting ready to get built that's going to make whatever you just built worth less. So it gives the owners some value. I think it says that NASCAR and the France family are really willing to step outside the box and say, hey, we want to grow this sport. We want to see it get to another level. We want to see it where it was at certain times in the late 90s, early 2000s. And this is our way of doing that, and our way of making sure that the owners are fully invested with us and seeing to it that happens.
Well, being a part of Tommy Baldwin Racing, too, it's also huge for you guys because you're guaranteed a start spot in the 500. I mean, that's huge. You don't have to worry about getting caught up. Well, you do have to worry about getting caught up in the duels or something going wrong.
Yeah, we don't want to run a backup car.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
But, I mean, there's a spot in the field for the 7 car. I mean, what's that do for a driver's nerves?
Well, it's going to make the whole week down there a lot easier until Sunday. The nerves are going to be the same on Sunday. We touched earlier on how big of a race the 500 is and how important it is. That simple fact, you wake up and you feel that no matter what Sunday morning. But what we didn't touch on was the fact that on Sunday, the prior Sunday when we qualify, you're just as nervous then. I remember 3 or 4 times being down in Daytona and not knowing if you're going to make the race, hoping that you're one of the 5 or 6 quickest times, which locks you into the field, so you don't have to resort back to time with the old system. And let's face it, the old system was pretty complicated to figure out how to get into that race, and it took a degree just to say this guy's in, that guy's out, this guy's maybe out or whatever the case would be. So now we're going to go into Thursday, which was again another nerve-wracking day, because if you had a bad time, you knew you had to be top 16. If there's, at times there was 30 cars out there in each dual race, you're going to have a lot more relaxation going into that race. And let's take a team like Tommy's and like our team, for example. They missed the 500 last year because of a wreck in the duel. I think we only set, 3 cars, maybe 4 cars home from the 500, if I remember correct, last year. They were one of them. Their time was probably good enough to come close to getting in, but because some other cars that had similar times to them crashed in the same crash, they go home from it. So it's a big deal to know you're locked in, to know that you can focus on Sunday, to know that you can protect your car. Tommy's already told me. I was asking him about practice schedules and what days we thought we were going to practice, and he's basically already said, you got the day off Friday. We're not putting the race car on the racetrack Friday. Our mission's going to be to get through Thursday clean and make sure that we can run our primary car. There's a reason. I always say this all the time. There's a reason why there's a primary car and a backup car. It's because the primary car is better than the backup car. I don't care what crew chiefs or teams say. There's a reason they picked that car over the other ones. So we want to make sure that we get to run that primary car. And you may see a little less tension on those dual races because of this. Now, I can't guarantee that, but common sense would say that you want to protect your stuff.
Well, Richard Petty was on the stage with Brian France and Mike Helton and Tommy Baldwin the other day, and he said it was quite possibly one of the biggest things he had seen in NASCAR history. And we actually have a soundbite that we're going to play from Richard Petty. So let's take a listen to that real quick, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
To me, this is the second most important thing that's ever happened in NASCAR, because now the drivers and the owners and stuff now can really work across the aisle. I was telling him a while ago, it's sort of like the Democrats and the Republicans. They've been doing their thing. We've been doing our thing and meeting in the middle a little bit. We're getting rid of that. We're going to all be in the middle of the deal now. The owners, we don't understand how NASCAR works, okay? And and they don't know how the race teams work. So now we're going to be in the same room talking about the same problems and solving the problems together.
I mean, you heard it there. He's comparing it to politics, but working across the aisle and being able to work with NASCAR and teams, having a bigger say in what's going on. But, one of the biggest things is we're taking the field down from 43 to 40 cars, and there's only 36 guaranteed charters, so only 36 guys are guaranteed a spot in the field. What does that do for those 4 extra spots?
Well, the pressure's turned up, especially if you look at a guy like Ryan Blaney and the Wood Brothers 21. I mean, they have good equipment. They're essentially running Penske equipment, but not to be guaranteed in those races. I mean that kind of turns the pressure on.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And as of sitting here today, I think we got 38 cars committed to the full season no matter what. So maybe one week you have 4 cars that aren't committed to the full season show up. You got a 42-car field. You have a small mistake, a missed shift or something in qualifying. Next thing you know, you're going home from a race if you're not careful. So it's gonna change week to week for them as to how nervous they are. Daytona being the first race, I think 43 cars as of now that are going to be down in Daytona. 3 of them are going to go home, and it very easily could be that 21 if they're not careful. And we know their history at that racetrack, how good the 21 has been there. So I don't think any of us want to see that happen. And we talked about how the pressure was off of guys like myself and Tommy Baldwin racing. All of a sudden, now that pressure's on those other 7 teams, and it's going to be even more pressure because it's been narrowed how many spots they're racing for. So could be an interesting storyline heading into Speed Weeks.
I think that storyline throughout the year of qualifying is going to be intense to watch all year. Another storyline that we saw coming into 2016 was the fact that Tony Stewart was racing for his final shot of the Daytona 500, and now we're not going to have Tony in the 14 for the 500. That news kind of came as a shock, but as a fan, Jonathan, like, how do you take that?
I mean, for as long as I've been, watching the sport regularly, Tony Stewart's been a part of that, and just like Jeff Gordon leaving last year. But it's almost like you have a full season to accept the fact that Tony's not going to be there next year, and you look forward to him having that shot at his last 500. And now that that's kind of been taken away, you kind of really. It's hard to think about Tony Stewart not being in that field when that was the hype over the offseason. Can Smoke win the 500? And, now it's kind of null and void. So, I mean, there's still going to be a lot of excitement going into Daytona, but for Tony Stewart fans, it's got to be hard to swallow.
Yeah, I think not only for Tony Stewart fans, but for fellow competitors. I look forward to seeing Tony have one more opportunity to win that 500. And I guess maybe not a fair comparison, but it's kind of like Dale Earnhardt winning his first one. And you almost pull for a guy like that, and you want to see him go out there and do good in that last opportunity. Jeff Gordon had a ton of success down there last year, and right up until about 5 to go, had a shot to win that race in his last one. Nonetheless, it's disappointing for Tony, I'm sure, but equally as disappointing for everybody that's a fan and a friend of the sport to not get to see him have that last opportunity. And I guess we can look months down the road. I'm sure the questions are going to come for him. Hey, are you going to run one more 500? Are you going to try it again in 2017? The priority for Tony right now is getting healed and getting healthy and fixing his back there. But definitely a disappointment, and I'm sure he's wishing he'll be there. And unfortunately, we can't change that now.
And we do wish Tony a speedy recovery. We want to see that 14 back on the track with Smoke behind the wheel. Now, the big buzz that's been going on right now is who is going to fill in for Tony Stewart in the Daytona 500 and the next however many months while he's out. And Regan, I think you have a little bit of experience filling in for Smoke.
I may have been in that car once before. Yeah, it was, seat kind of fit, kind of nice. It was a good car. I guess I'm fortunate I got a full-time ride right now and excited about that. But I did hear maybe Jonathan, did you throw your name in the hat?
Me and Tony do wear the same size fire suit, but I do not think I have a NASCAR license that qualifies me to do that. So
your license does definitely not qualify you to get behind the wheel.
Hard card's not enough.
Yeah, there you go.
What's that team looking for in a driver? I mean, as someone who has worked with them before, what are they looking for in a replacement driver?
Well, that's a good question to ask. In my situation, when I hopped in the car at Watkins Glen, and again for Kurt with the same team or same organization, different team further down the road, the Watkins Glen was a case of, can you get here? We need somebody here fast. Naturally, it's got to be somebody that NASCAR will approve to hop in a Cup car who hasn't been in one all weekend long. And that's another thing that you have to look at is you got to make sure they got the right guidelines for them to get in the car. So is it going to be a 18-year-old kid? Probably not, because they don't have the approval to go run Daytona as a first race. But with that said, they're going to look more than likely for somebody with experience, I would think, and somebody that can hit the ground running. You got a rookie crew chief that has a ton of experience, but just not calling all the shots as the head guy. So you're going to have to help try and teach him so that when Tony does come back, whether that's 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, whatever his timeline for return is, that team is rolling, clicking off some good runs. And, we saw it with Kyle Busch last year. Will he get a waiver? Won't he get a waiver? I would assume it would be the same situation as Kyle last year. The only question mark I would have is it didn't happen on track. So do they look at that differently? But if he can get a win and get back into the top 30 in points, who knows? He could still go into that chase and have an opportunity.
I mean, I feel if you could put together a summer like Kyle had, you deserve to be
absolutely
in that conversation for the championship. Be sure to keep it on NASCAR.com throughout speed weeks. Whenever the announcement comes, probably going to be in the media center down in Daytona. We will have a press pass for that live on NASCAR.com, so you can watch it then, or check out the coverage on NASCAR.com in the video gallery. There'll be an article. There'll be a bunch of stuff. Jonathan, you're heading down there. You'll probably talk about it. But we're heading down to Daytona. That's the big overall thing about this, is that we're going down there, and we've got some fantasy games coming up.
We do.
So who do you like in the Daytona 500? Now, other than yourself, Regan, because, if you're playing NASCAR fantasy, you might take yourself, but take your driver hat off and put your analyst hat on. Who are you taking in the 500?
Well, I think the easy pick and the one that you can just know is going to run good before we even get there off the top is going to be Junior.
Yep.
Junior Nation. Woo!
Junior.
Everybody would be happy to hear that. So definitely you got a guy like Junior, but to look a little further into the field, I think somebody like a Denny Hamlin. Denny runs good there every year. He's an aggressive plate racer. The moves that he makes, you can tell, he's right on the edge of what he can get away with, what he can't get away with. So he's somebody who always ends up towards the front of the pack. He's also somebody that might end up causing a wreck, but that's the risk that you take when you plate race. Matt Kenseth, another guy. I think Matt Kenseth, to me, is probably the most underrated plate driver out there. It just
agree with that.
Seems like he's always up front. He finds his way to get up there one way or another.
Well, it's funny to me too, because when you think about guys at Daytona Talladega, Matt Kenseth isn't the first one that comes to mind. He's got 2 Daytona 500 trophies. Yeah. I mean, he's a good plate racer.
You don't luck into the Daytona 500 trophies. It just doesn't happen that way. So another guy that I think seems to find his way to the front, maybe a little more under the radar. Also, somebody like a Kurt Busch. It seems like he's always up there, and at certain points of the race can find his way up close to it. Of those guys, there's a couple of them that don't have 500 wins, so they're going to be pushing, just as hard to get up there.
And that 41 team, they were coming on strong there towards the end of last season, so they might carry that momentum into the 500, which would be good to see.
This is the beauty of going to Daytona, though. There's so many guys that you could look at and you could say, this might be the guy, that might be the guy. We don't really know till we get there, and that's the luxury of our sport and what we do is we're going to show up, we're going to qualify, and we're going to say, okay, we think we know who's got the best car because of qualifying now, but then we're going to go practice Wednesday. We're going to race Thursday night. After Thursday night, we'll have a little better idea which cars can lead the pack, which cars can't lead the pack. But here's the other side of this: is Thursday night it's probably going to be 40 degrees, it's going to be cold, it's going to be dark, the track's going to have no temperature in it. Fast forward to Sunday, the early weather forecasts are already showing for 75 degrees on Sunday compared to 40 that we're racing Thursday night. That's just like last year. The cars, all of a sudden, now handling matters. They don't drive as good. This particular rules package on the speedways, it makes handling matter once again, which it hadn't for years. We had so much downforce and so much grip that we were just out there making the craziest moves you could ever imagine. Now, when we make those crazy moves, we got to think about it before we do it. So, who knows what could happen between Thursday and Sunday as to who's going to have the best car, who's going to be up front the most. And I think you still have to look for the experience and the guys that have the proven track records, but that could change.
So we're going to be playing NASCAR Fantasy Live all season long. We're going to have a bunch of guys coming through the podcast. So we're going to have teams set up. Jonathan, I'm going to put you on the spot right quick. What's your fantasy team name going to be this year?
Mine is Bald Eagles. It's just a carryover from last year. So,
okay.
Womp, womp, womp.
You got a good fantasy? Can you top that? Do you have a better fantasy team name than Bald Eagles?
I don't. I'll be honest. I haven't thought about it yet. Yeah. So I will have, though. Now that you telegraphed your shot and I know what your team's name is, I'll make sure I work hard enough to beat that.
I appreciate it.
I think I'm going to go with like Chucktopotamus or something like Chuckopotamus. Something.
I don't know.
That. I don't know. I don't know if it has enough characters.
I saw a picture of you in a furry animal suit. Maybe we could do something.
Squirrely Chuck.
Those lines. Yeah.
Squirrely Chuck. I could go with that. The Squirrely Chucks.
There you go.
Getting squirrely out there.
It's getting weird in here.
It is getting weird in here. But we are going to be playing all year long. We're going to play NASCAR Fantasy Live. We're going to play Streak to the Finish to the NASCAR Pick'em, where you pick your drivers across all 3 National Touring Series.
You want to know the key to end up winning that? I'm just going to call it before it happens. We have to play that every week. You can't forget to set your streak to the finish lineup. I feel like the person who's the most consistent is going to win.
Last year, I slacked off a little bit with my fantasy picks and didn't make a couple, but this year I'm hoping that this will keep me honest and I will make my picks. So
it's fun. Do it every week.
It is. It is a great game, and it's a great way to talk junk to your fellow coworkers in the office.
Fantasy sports on Monday morning, greatest thing there is. I mean, how can you beat it?
Yep.
It's going to be a lot of fun talking junk. It's always fun when you beat somebody and you can say, hey, man, your lineup sucked. Mine was good. But that is going to do it for us this week on the Dirty Air Podcast. For Jonathan Merriman, Regan Smith, thank you for joining us. Make sure you watch NASCAR Media Day live on NASCAR.com. Jonathan will be down there hosting the show. And Regan, come on by and make fun of him down there.
Crash the party.
It's going to be awesome. For all of us here, enjoy your week. And we'll see you next week here in the Dirty Air.